Imagine attempting to write a comprehensive, like an actual operational manual detailing exactly how anomalous non-human intelligences manipulate human reality.
Right, which is already a wild concept to try and put down on paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now imagine that if you are caught writing this manual, you won't just, lose your academic tenure or get mocked on the internet.
Oh, it's so much worse than that.
Yeah, you will be dragged out of your apartment in the middle of the night by the secret police.
Yep.
Interrogated, executed, and your very existence will be completely erased from public record.
It's terrifying. I mean, the stakes are unimaginably high.
That was the actual reality for Mikhail Bulgakov in 1930s Moscow.
Under Stalin.
Right, operating under the absolute terror of Stalin's regime.
Yeah.
And this was a state that mandated dogmatic materialism and state atheism.
Which meant that suggesting anything outside of that, anything beyond the physical, measurable, state-approved world was literal treason.
Yeah, an act of treason. Yet, Bulgakov spent the final, agonizingly dark decade of his life secretly writing what many people now consider to be the most accurate map of high strangeness ever committed to paper.
It's incredible.
He actually burned his early drafts out of sheer terror.
He burned them himself.
Yes. He burned them and then rewrote them from memory, only finishing the manuscript right before his death in 1940.
Wow.
So today, we're taking a massive stack of sources, heavily anchoring on this fascinating research paper called Bulgakov's Master and Margarita, ufology's literary precursor.
It's such a good paper.
It really is. And for you listening, what we're going to do is look at his masterpiece, not as magical realism and not as some political satire.
Right, because that's how it's usually taught.
Exactly. We're looking at it as a structural blueprint for the phenomenon. So, okay, let's unpack this.
The audacity of what Bulgakov achieved here, I mean, it really cannot be overstated.
How so?
Well, we are so accustomed to conceptualizing the UAP phenomenon, or just high strangeness in general, through a strictly post-atomic lens,
Right, like mid-century American stuff, Roswell and beyond.
Exactly. We look at radar data, metamaterials, congressional hearings, all that hardware-focused stuff.
Yeah, the nuts and bolts.
But by analyzing the Master Margarita through these modern theoretical frameworks, specifically Jacques Vallée's control system hypothesis and George Hansen's trickster theories, we find something crazy.
What's that?
We uncover a phenomenological grammar that predates Roswell by a full decade.
Okay, that is wild.
Right. Bulgakov wasn't writing about extraterrestrial hardware at all. He was documenting the precise mechanical ways in which a rigid consensual reality shatters.
Shatters when an intelligence intrudes.
Exactly. When an irreducibly complex intelligence decides to just drop in. He mapped the cognitive breakdown, the temporal manipulation, spatial distortions, and that purposeful absurdity that we see in almost every legitimate anomalous encounter today.
It's all there in the case files.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if this is a blueprint, let's start where contact usually begins.
Which is rarely a gentle introduction.
Right, yeah. In Bulgakov's world and in modern case files, it begins with a violent dismantling of the witness's worldview.
Total deconstruction.
So Chapter 1 drops us into Patriarch's Ponds in Moscow. It's this sweltering spring evening, and we meet Mikhail Alexandrovich Berlioz.
A great character.
He's a prominent literary editor, and he is basically the ultimate avatar for the Soviet state's materialist consensus.
He's the guy who thinks he has it all figured out.
Oh, completely. He believes the universe is a closed system, everything can be measured, categorized.
And anything else is just a delusion.
Or a lie, yeah. So he's actively lecturing this younger poet, Ivan, about how to properly write an anti-religious poem.
He's insisting that figures like Jesus never even existed historically.
Right, just totally airtight, arrogant certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And into this walks a stranger.
Yes.
A foreign professor who calls himself Voland.
And Voland operates here as the stand-in for the anomalous intelligence.
The phenomenon itself.
Exactly. And the interaction between them is just, it's a masterclass in the mechanics of ontological shock.
Break that down for us, because Berlioz doesn't just run away screaming.
No. He attempts to engage Voland intellectually first. He tries to use the tools of his dogmatic framework to make sense of him.
Which doesn't work.
Not at all. When Voland calmly states that he, personally, witnessed the events of antiquity.
Like he was literally there.
Right. Berlioz immediately tries to pathologize him.
Because that's what institutions do.
Exactly. He tries to categorize Voland as either a foreign spy or just a lunatic who escaped from an asylum.
Which is the standard operating procedure for any rigid institution when it faces anomalous data.
Spot on. If the data doesn't fit the model, well, the data must be flawed.
Or the witness is crazy.
Right. The institution protects itself by attacking the vector of the anomaly.
But Voland and I love this. He doesn't waste time debating philosophy with Berlioz.
He just bypasses the firewall completely.
Yeah, he bypasses that intellectual defense by predicting the future in this granular, hyperspecific, incredibly morbid way.
It's so unsettling.
Voland casually informs Berlioz that he is going to die tonight.
And not just die, but how?
Right. He says Berlioz is going to have his head cut off by a young Soviet woman driving a streetcar.
And the reason?
Because another woman, Anushka, has already bought sunflower oil and spilled it on the turnstile.
It's just a completely absurd sequence of causal events.
Totally absurd. And Berlioz, wrapped up in his armor of logic, he just laughs it off.
He physically cannot process the data.
And that inability to process the data is fatal.
It really is. In anomalistic studies, we talk a lot about ontological shock. It's heavily documented, but I think it's often poorly understood by the public.
Yeah, people think it just means being really surprised.
Right, like a jump scare. But it isn't mere surprise. It is the agonizing psychological restructuring that happens when an individual realizes their fundamental model of reality is just false.
Where his lore drops out.
Exactly. When a system as hardened as Berlioz's encounters a higher dimensional reality, it cannot flex. It breaks.
So his absolute refusal to adapt his worldview to this impossible info leads directly to his physical destruction.
Yep. He walks away, slips on that exact puddle of spilled sunflower oil,
Falls onto the tracks.
and is decapitated by the streetcar, just like Voland said.
It's brutal. And what's wild is that the text actually provides this visceral descriptor of what the cognitive breaking point feels like well before the accident even happens.
Yes, that specific sensation.
Right. Multiple characters experience it. Berlioz, the Opalikativ, the housing chairman Nikanor Ivanovich.
Whenever the impossible asserts itself.
Yes. Bulgakov describes it as feeling like a needle being snatched from the brain.
That phrase is so striking.
It's not a thought. It's a physical rewiring.
Honestly, the needle snatched from the brain is perhaps one of the most clinically accurate literary descriptions of a close encounter I've ever seen.
Really? Does it match real case files?
Absolutely. Modern experiencer accounts consistently feature these profound neurological symptoms right at the onset of high strangeness.
Like what kind of symptoms?
We see reports of sudden, localized cranial pressure,
Wow.
metallic tastes in the mouth, sudden massive spikes in adrenaline, and feelings of severe dissociation.
Like they're detaching from reality.
Yeah. It is a physiological manifestation of a reality model collapsing. The brain is trying to run a diagnostic on an event that breaks the very laws of physics it evolved to understand.
If you're listening, think about trying to run a massive, hyper-complex, next-generation rendering software on a clunky beige desktop computer from like 1995.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
You don't just get a poor frame rate or a glitchy image.
No, the machine freezes up.
Exactly. The hardware itself is so overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incompatible data that the processor overheats, the cooling fans fail, and the entire system fatally crashes. You get the blue screen of death.
Berlioz is that 1995 desktop.
He really is. His materialist hardware simply cannot compile the data Voland is feeding him.
It just crashes.
But, this brings up a massive complication regarding how the phenomenon actually operates.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, if this intelligence, whether we are talking about Voland or the intelligence behind modern UAP activity, if it's sophisticated enough to map human causality and predict a decapitation down to the spilled oil,
Right.
why does the interaction have to be so cognitively violent? I mean, couldn't it just introduce itself politely? If the goal is contact, why the trauma? Why the needle in the brain?
That's the big question. And the thing is, the violence to the human psyche is rarely intentional malice.
It's not trying to hurt us.
Not usually, no. It
Okay.
is simply a mechanical byproduct of dimensional friction.
Dimensional fiction. Okay, explain that.
Imagine an MRI machine. To the machine, the human body is understood entirely as a series of two-dimensional slices.
Right, it takes flat pictures.
Exactly. It reads the slices and compiles data. Now imagine if you tried to explain to one of those flat two-dimensional slices what a complete three-dimensional human being looks like walking down a sunny street.
The slice wouldn't even have the vocabulary for it.
The slice lacks the geometry. The fundamental architecture to comprehend that information simply isn't there.
Wow.
So the trauma occurs because the sheer scale and depth of the reality being introduced annihilates the boundaries the human mind relies upon to maintain its sanity.
And the first boundary that the phenomenon aggressively dismantles, as we see in the book, is the human perception of time.
Right. Time is usually the first thing to go.
Which we see happen immediately after Berlioz dies. The young poet Ivan witnesses the whole thing.
He sees the impossible happen.
And he decides he needs to apprehend Voland. So this kicks off a frantic, chaotic chase across the streets of Moscow.
Ivan is running after Voland, and Voland has his two bizarre accomplices with him.
Yeah, a giant cat and a strange choir master. But the environment around Ivan starts behaving in ways that completely violate linear progression.
It gets so weird.
During his initial conversation with Voland, just prior to the chase, Ivan experiences a sudden, inexplicable onset of darkness.
And the text makes it very clear this isn't just a cloud passing over the sun.
No, it's a disorienting, localized collapse of daylight.
Yes.
And then, during the chase itself, Ivan can see his targets clearly. They're just ahead of him.
But he can never catch them.
Right. No matter how fast he runs, no matter what shortcuts he takes, they maintain the exact same distance. They're gliding away with the non-physical logic.
Vivid, yet utterly ungraspable.
Exactly. So how does this map to the real world?
Well, Ivan is basically trapped in a localized temporal distortion.
A time slip.
Yeah. The mechanics of this chase scene map flawlessly onto the concept of missing time and time slips that completely dominate modern anomalistics.
Can you give an example from the files?
Sure. Consider the 2022 barn recording, or the 2023 drive-to-work commuter anomalies.
Oh, the commuter one is wild.
It really is. In those incidents, witnesses described sudden, inexplicable environmental shifts.
Like day turning to night.
Exactly. Day turning to night in a fraction of a second. Or a drive that should take 20 minutes suddenly taking 3 hours, and the driver has zero conscious memory of the interim.
They just lose the time completely.
Yep. The phenomenon manipulates the localized flow of time around the witness. It creates this bubble where standard physical laws are just suspended.
It's dictating the terms.
Absolutely. The dreamlike evasiveness of Voland's retinue is the exact same evasiveness recorded by fighter pilots.
Oh, like when they try to lock onto a UAP.
Right. They try to establish radar locks on UAPs that can drop from 80,000 feet to sea level in less than a second without a sonic boom.
The target is completely dictating the physical terms of the engagement.
It always does.
And Bulgakov takes his temporal manipulation and weaves it into the literal architecture of the novel itself.
The structure of the book is brilliant.
It really is. Because as a reader, you are violently thrown back and forth between 1930s Stalinist Moscow and ancient Jerusalem. Right, Jerusalem, during the trial of Jesus by Pontius Pilate.
And it's important to note these aren't presented as historical flashbacks.
No, the prose in the Jerusalem chapters is hyper-vivid. It's visceral and immediate.
Yeah.
It reads as though it's happening concurrently with the events in Moscow.
Two timelines running parallel.
Exactly. And the climax of this structural parallel features Pontius Pilate sitting in a desolate, rocky landscape.
Existing completely outside the normal flow of space-time.
Trapped in a single moment for 2,000 years, just waiting for release.
Yeah.
But wait, let me push back on this for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Jumping between 1930s Moscow and ancient Jerusalem?
Yeah.
Isn't that just a classic literary framing device?
It seems like it, sure.
I mean, how do we know Bulgakov meant this as a literal physics concept and not just, a metaphor?
That is exactly where we have to look at the specific historical and scientific context of Bulgakov's writing process. Yeah. It would be so easy to dismiss the shifting timelines and Pilate's purgatory as just a literary device. But Bulgakov was actually an avid consumer of cutting-edge theoretical physics.
Really? In the 1920s and 30s?
Yes. Specifically, the work of Swedish physicist Oskar Klein.
Okay, I've heard that name.
During the time Bulgakov was conceptualizing The Master and Margarita, Klein was publishing his pioneering expansions on Kaluza-Klein theory.
Which was about trying to unify physics.
Right, exactly. They were attempting to unify electromagnetism and Einstein's general relativity.
Big stuff.
Huge. And to make the math work to fit both gravity and electromagnetism into a single framework, Klein proposed that a fifth spatial dimension had to exist.
A fifth dimension.
Yes, but this fifth dimension was curled up on itself, compacted at a microscopic level.
Meaning we couldn't see it.
Right, rendering it imperceptible to normal human consciousness operating in 3 dimensions.
Okay, hold on. Why would an intelligence capable of bending space-time having access to a fifth dimension, care about playing games in Moscow.
Or showing up on military radar, yeah.
Exactly. If it has that kind of power, why intersect with our timeline at all? It feels like an advanced civilization bothering to interact with an ant farm, but doing it by drawing cryptic shapes in the sand.
It does feel like that, but the intersection points are not random.
They're not.
No, they are structural. This is the core of the intertemporal hypothesis in ufology.
You get down.
The theory posits that anomalous intelligences are not traversing vast linear distances across the vacuum of space in metallic ships.
So they aren't flying here from Zeta Reticuli.
Probably not. They are navigating dimensions. They are crossing temporal streams.
Wow.
They interact with the ant farm because the human consciousness, the human observer, is intrinsically linked to the localized collapse of reality they are manifesting.
So we are part of the equation.
Exactly. If an intelligence possesses mastery over Oscar Klein's fifth dimension, the manipulation of time is really only half the equation.
What's the other half?
The complete subjugation of physical space.
Okay, let's look at exactly how Bulgakov illustrates that subjugation of space, because it brings us to chapter 22.
Oh, apartment number 50.
Yes, the infamous apartment 50 on Bolshaya Sadovaya Street.
This is a crucial scene.
So Margarita, our protagonist, is invited to act as the hostess for Satan's spring ball.
Which is quite the invitation.
Right. And to attend, she has to enter this specific apartment. Now, contextually, if you're listening, you have to understand that a 1930s Moscow apartment was a communal, cramped, miserable living situation.
People were packed like sardines into these tiny three-room flats.
Exactly. So Margarita opens the door expecting this claustrophobic space.
But that's not what she finds.
Not at all. She steps into an environment that has been expanded into an infinite sprawling castle.
It's massive.
She's walking through vast columned halls, enormous ballrooms, indoor forests. There's an endless, invisible stairway.
The interior dimensions drastically, impossibly exceed the exterior physical boundaries of the building.
Yes. And when Margarita inevitably questions how this architectural impossibility is functioning, Willen's associate, Koroviev, provides a precise technical answer.
What's fascinating here is that he states explicitly that for those who are on friendly terms with the fifth dimension, expanding a three-dimensional room to any desired proportion is an elementary task.
He literally cites the theoretical physics of his day.
Yes. Bulgakov used actual science to bridge ancient folklore, like fairy realms, with modern physics.
And in doing so, he outlines a spatial distortion, this non-Euclidean interior expansion, that is one of the most fiercely consistent hallmarks of close encounters today.
It really is.
I am going to walk through the Betty Andreasen case from 1967 for you listening, because it mirrors apartment 50 with terrifying precision.
It's a perfect parallel.
So Andreasen reported entities passing directly through the solid wood of her kitchen door.
Right through the matter.
Yeah. And when she was subsequently taken to their craft, she described approaching a small metallic object resting in her yard.
How big did it look from the outside?
Very compact, maybe the size of a small car.
Okay.
But the moment she crossed the threshold, the interior exploded in scale.
Just like the apartment.
Exactly. She described navigating through sprawling, complex corridors, eventually entering a massive cavernous space she likened to a crystalline cathedral.
Inside something the size of a car.
Right. It was filled with strange equipment and environments that seemed to stretch infinitely into the distance. The exterior volume of the craft simply could not contain the interior volume she traversed.
We see the exact same volumetric discrepancy in the Nancy Tremaine abduction reports.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And the Lovelace campsite observations, too. A three-dimensional space is being unfolded.
Unfolded.
If we apply higher dimensional geometry to this, our reality is essentially a flat surface to these entities.
Okay, here's my analogy for this. It's like unzipping a deeply compressed digital file.
Oh, the ZIP file analogy.
Yes. Think about it. You have a massive folder on your computer. Hundreds of gigabytes of high-definition video, architectural blueprints, complex software.
A huge amount of data.
Right. You compress that folder into a ZIP file. On your 2D desktop, it manifests as a tiny, single icon. It takes up a fraction of a millimeter of screen real estate.
Practically nothing.
But when you double-click that icon and execute the unzipping process, the file expands, unfolding an entire digital ecosystem.
That is exactly what's happening.
The phenomenon is treating physical reality like a computer desktop. It parks a highly compressed 5D construct in a suburban backyard, and when the witness steps inside, the file unzips.
That mechanical translation of data perfectly illustrates why the physical properties of these craft seem to defy all of our engineering principles.
Because it's not a ship.
Right. The craft is not a vehicle in the traditional sense. It is a localized spatial envelope.
Wow.
And if an intelligence can treat a physical room like a digital ZIP file, expanding and collapsing its volume at will, it stands to reason that it views geographic distance in the exact same manner.
Oh, of course. If the inside of a room can be stretched to infinity, then distance on Earth is completely meaningless to them.
The concept of space becomes entirely irrelevant.
Which leads us directly to the collapse of geographic coordinates, the phenomenon known as spontaneous appertation.
This is where things get really terrifying for the witness.
Yeah. Bulgakov gives us the character of Styopa Likadev. He's the director of the Variety Theater.
And he's having a rough morning.
He wakes up in his Moscow apartment with a severe hangover, and he's confronted by Azazello, this terrifying, fanged member of Volan's crew.
Right.
After a brief, incredibly confusing exchange, Styopa experiences a sudden sensory blackout.
Just lights out.
And when he regains his senses, he is no longer in his bedroom.
Where is he?
He's sitting on a stone pier.
Right.
The sun is glaring. He smells the salt of the sea.
Nowhere near Moscow.
No. He manages to ask a passerby where he is, and the person tells him he's in Yalta.
Yalta, that's in the Black Sea.
He's been teleported from Moscow to the Crimean Peninsula, a distance of roughly 1,000 kilometers in an instant.
The psychological devastation he experiences is profound.
His brain cannot process the missing travel time, or the geographic impossibility of it all.
Styopa's forced teleportation is a perfect literary execution of an apport.
At a port, yeah.
The intelligence shatters the witness's localized spatial coordinates to demonstrate absolute dominion over physical reality.
And when we cross-reference this with the historical anomalous database,
the parallels are chillin'.
They really are. Let's analyze the mechanics of the Dr. Geraldo Vidal case from May of 1968.
This one always gets me.
For you listening, the Vidal case is one of the most unnerving events in the literature. Dr. Vidal and his wife are driving their car along a completely standard routine route near Chascomús, Argentina.
Normal conditions, nothing out of the ordinary.
Right. Suddenly, they encounter an incredibly dense, unnatural fog bank resting on the road.
They drive into it.
And they simply vanish. The car, the couple, everything.
Gone.
For 48 hours, their family and the local authorities have no idea where they are. They're presumed dead or missing in a terrible accident. 2 days later, the family receives a phone call. It's Dr. Vidal.
And where is he calling from?
He's calling from the Argentine consulate. But he isn't calling from anywhere near Chascomús. He is calling from Mexico City.
A displacement of over 6,000 miles.
6,000 miles.
Unbelievable.
They lost 48 hours of conscious memory. They woke up in their car, parked on an unfamiliar street in a completely different hemisphere.
And the physical evidence on the vehicle was deeply anomalous, wasn't it?
Yes. The paint on the car was heavily scorched, showing signs of exposure to intense thermal or microwave radiation.
Yet the vehicle itself was functionally intact.
Exactly. And then there's the Carlos Alberto Diaz case in Bahia Blanca, Argentina.
Oh, right.
Diaz was struck by an intense beam of light while outside at night, lost consciousness, and woke up completely paralyzed, lying in a field 200 miles away from his starting coordinates.
Consider the psychological function of these events. The intelligence is not merely transporting these individuals.
What is it doing?
It is weaponizing geography.
Weaponizing geography.
Yes. By instantly moving a theater director from Moscow to Yalta, or a doctor from Argentina to Mexico, the phenomenon deliberately induces a state of ontological freefall.
So if you're listening, just physically imagine your current surroundings right now. Feel the chair you're in.
Yeah, ground yourself.
And then imagine blinking and suddenly feeling the sea breeze of a beach 600 miles away.
The sheer panic.
The trauma that would induce is staggering. So what does this all mean? Why move a theater director or an Argentine doctor across a continent just to mess with them?
Because messing with them is exactly the point.
Really?
Yes. And to understand why, we have to introduce the concept of the trickster.
Right, because this brings us to a massive contradiction in all of this.
Which is?
We're describing a non-human intelligence capable of manipulating fifth-dimensional space.
True.
Predicting human timelines, teleporting maps across continents. These are acts of godlike engineering.
Absolutely.
Yet the way this intelligence chooses to present itself is frequently ridiculous.
Oh, it's totally absurd.
Right. The Vidals end up in Mexico City, but why? Styopa is sent to Yalta, but why? It feels absurd.
That's because the absurdity is not a glitch in the phenomenon.
It's not a mistake.
No, it is the core operating protocol. And to understand the mechanics of this protocol, we really need to apply George Hansen's theory of the trickster archetype and integrate it with Jacques Vallée's control system.
Okay, let's ground this in Bulgakov's most unforgettable creation, Behemoth.
Behemoth is amazing.
Behemoth is a demonic black cat, but he is massive, like the size of a hog.
And he walks upright.
He walks completely upright on his hind legs. He speaks fluent Russian. He plays highly strategic games of chess.
He even pays for his own tram ticket.
Yes, and he has a deep affinity for drinking vodka and cognac. He is the walking, talking embodiment of the absurd.
Pure absurdity.
And the pinnacle of Behemoth's activity occurs when the Soviet secret police, the feared NKVD, finally locate Volin's crew in apartment 50.
The NKVD representing the absolute apex of state violence and rational control.
Yes, they burst in, heavily armed. And what do they find?
They find a giant cat swinging on a chandelier, holding a Primus stove.
It's just so funny to picture. Yes, a fierce, close-quarters shootout erupts. The secret police empty their revolvers at the cat. The room is shredded by gunfire.
But Behemoth is entirely impervious to the bullets.
Completely immune, he continues swinging on the chandelier, taking casual sips of his drink, and openly mocking the officers while they desperately try to execute him.
It is pure, unfiltered chaos.
And we see similar events throughout the novel, right?
Well, constantly. Theater audiences whose clothes magically dissolve, sending them running naked through the streets of Moscow.
Bureaucrats temporarily transformed into vampires.
Counterfeit money turning into mineral water labels. The phenomenon saturates the environment with relentless, humiliating absurdity.
It exposes the absolute impotence of Soviet sense-making.
Exactly. And Hansen's analysis of the trickster archetype is vital here. In folklore, the trickster, whether it's Loki, Coyote, or Behemoth, is rarely just a source of comic relief.
What are they then?
The trickster is an agent of systemic transition. The trickster governs liminal spaces, the borders between established realities, the twilight zones of culture and physics.
Okay.
The primary function of the trickster is to operate at the margins of an established order and deliberately expose the fragility, the impotence of human institutions.
So Behemoth theatrics serve a specific function.
Yes, they destabilize the rigid, heavily armed apparatus of the Soviet state by proving that their physics, their violence, and their rules are completely useless.
And Jacques Vallée takes this trickster dynamic and applies it directly to the modern UAP database through his concept of the system of absurdity.
Right. Vallée argues that anomalous encounters rarely present logical, linear, or scientifically digestible behaviors.
Witnesses don't just see a silent aerodynamic craft.
No, they see a glowing orb land, and a giant cat steps out and offers them a drink.
Or they encounter entities that look like Michelin men.
Or, as in one famous case, they meet occupants of a saucer who give them a stack of pancakes.
The pancake case. It's so weird, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
If the phenomenon is so highly advanced, why does it need to do this?
Well, the system of absurdity serves two distinct, highly effective functional purposes.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is psychological bypass. We discussed the rigid intellectual defenses of a character like Berlioz.
Like the guy who got decapitated?
Exactly. If a phenomenon presents itself as an advanced technological construct, say, an entity handing over a complex mathematical theorem, the human brain immediately attempts to process it using existing scientific paradigms.
It tries to measure, quantify, and categorize it.
Exactly. But if the phenomenon presents the witness with an absurdity, a pancake, or a cognac-drinking cat, the logical centers of the brain simply short-circuit.
They just give up.
The analytical mind is forced to stand down because the data is violently incompatible with logic.
So it bypasses the firewall.
Yes. This bypass allows the phenomenon to interact with the deeper, subconscious layers of the witness's psyche without intellectual interference. It breaks the old conditioning to install the new.
Wow. And the second purpose?
The second purpose is perhaps even more brilliant. The absurdity functions as a systemic camouflage.
A perimeter fog.
Exactly. Think about the flow of information in our society. An individual experiences a profound, reality-altering encounter.
Right.
But the details of that encounter are heavily contaminated with absurdity. The witness reports seeing a craft shaped like a giant sombrero or entities speaking in nonsensical riddles.
I've read reports exactly like that.
Right. So when this report reaches mainstream institutions, universities, the military, the media, the scientific establishment, what is the inevitable outcome?
Immediate institutional rejection.
Spot on. The scientific method requires consistency, predictability, and rationality. When presented with the absurd, the institution instinctively recoils.
They categorize the event as a hoax, a psychotic break, or a mass hallucination.
Because they have to. The phenomenon deliberately utilizes absurdity to inoculate itself against serious institutional investigation.
That is so smart. It provides exactly enough interaction to profoundly alter the individual witness.
But wraps the event in enough ridiculousness to ensure that rigid, dogmatic systems will never mobilize to capture or study it systematically.
It's an evolutionary defense mechanism.
Precisely.
The trickster hides in plain sight by making sure anyone who points at him looks like a complete fool.
That's the trick.
In The Master and Margarita, the Soviet state cannot process Voland. They can't arrest a demon cat. They can't draft a bureaucratic report explaining why an administrator is now a vampire.
The forced secular consensus fractures under the weight of the absurdity.
But, this perimeter fog creates massive collateral damage.
It does. It's devastating for the individuals.
Right. If the phenomenon deliberately acts absurd to protect itself from institutions, what happens to the poor witness who tries to tell the truth?
Look at the poet, Ivan Bezdemny.
Yeah. Ivan's trajectory represents the severest cost of encountering the anomalous. The price of gnosis.
The price of knowing.
Exactly. So after the crazy chase through Moscow, Ivan runs to a restaurant that serves as the gathering place for the Soviet literary elite.
He's desperate for help.
He bursts through the doors in a state of absolute shock. He's holding a candle and a paper icon, looking completely unhinged.
And he proceeds to tell his colleagues the literal, factual truth of what he has just experienced.
He tells them about the foreign professor predicting Berlioz's death, the severed head, the vanishing cat.
He presents the raw data of the encounter.
And society responds exactly as the control system intends.
They do not investigate his claim.
Not for a second. They immediately bind him, drag him out of the restaurant, and commit him to Dr. Stravinsky's psychiatric clinic.
He is clinically diagnosed as suffering from schizophrenia.
This is the pathologization of anomalous experiences. And it is a devastating reality for thousands of modern experiencers.
It's a huge issue in the community.
A person undergoes an event that shatters their reality. But when they attempt to integrate that experience by sharing it with their community, they are met with fierce rejection.
Secondary trauma.
Yes. Doctors, family members, shock to a mere chemical imbalance, sleep paralysis, or a symptom of mental illness.
Which forces them to silence.
Exactly. Our sources cite data indicating that a massive percentage, like 14% of UAP witnesses, completely conceal their sightings due to fear.
They suffer the trauma in silence because the institutional reaction, the stigma, the risk to their careers and relationships is often more damaging than the encounter itself.
But the analysis deepens here, doesn't it? Moving beyond the trauma.
Right, moving into the ultimate purpose of the interaction.
Because in Bulgakov's narrative, the psychiatric asylum ceases to be merely a prison.
It transforms.
It transforms into an incubator for gnosis, for profound, transformative spiritual knowledge.
It is within the confines of the clinic that Ivan meets the titular master, the author of the Jerusalem manuscript.
And through their clandestine conversations, away from the dogmatic noise of Soviet society, Ivan undergoes a massive psychological metamorphosis.
And this metamorphosis aligns perfectly with the empirical data gathered on modern anomalous experiencers.
What does the data actually say?
Well, when researchers actually bypass the stigma and conduct longitudinal studies on these individuals, the results are staggering.
Like which studies?
Look at the methodologies of Kenneth Ring's Life Changes Inventory or the Scalpone Phoenix Light study.
Right.
These aren't just informal surveys. Ring's inventory rigorously measures psychophysical shifts, changes in value orientations, and alterations in an individual's worldview following a close encounter or a near-death experience.
And what do they find?
The metrics consistently demonstrate that rather than emerging permanently broken or deeply delusional, a significant subset of experiencers report profound positive transformations.
Wow. Like what?
The data reveals a massive decrease in materialism and competitive drive.
That makes sense.
Experiencers frequently report heightened empathy, an increased concern for planetary welfare, and a shift away from organized dogmatic religion toward a more internalized, non-dogmatic spirituality.
The encounter violently strips away their superficial attachments to societal status and wealth.
Exactly. And Bulgakov mirrors this data point for point.
He does. Because prior to encountering Voland, Ivan was a highly ambitious, state-sanctioned propagandist,
He was writing bad poetry to advance his career and gain favor with the regime.
obsessed with status.
Yeah.
But following his ontological shock and his time in the clinic, Ivan's value system completely inverts.
He abandons poetry entirely.
He rejects his former ambitions. He leaves the clinic and becomes a quiet, deeply philosophical historian.
The master exhibits the exact same detachment.
Right, voluntarily living in a cramped basement flat, completely indifferent to the wealth and prestige offered by the state's literary establishment.
The phenomenon broke their conditioning.
It completely broke it. And we see an even more literal manifestation of this liberation in the character of Margarita.
Oh, Margarita's transformation is beautiful.
In her desperation to save the master, Margarita makes a pact with Azazello.
Annie gives her that mysterious golden cream.
Right. Upon applying the cream, Margarita undergoes a radical physical and psychological transformation.
She experiences a sudden onset of youth, an overwhelming sensation of weightlessness.
And a complete detachment from her physical body and earthly sorrow. She steps out of her window and literally takes flight over the streets of Moscow.
This flight sequence is incredible because it maps with such accuracy to the sensation of out-of-body detachment reported by approximately 65% of modern UAP experiencers.
65%.
Yeah, it is the visceral feeling of consciousness separating from the dense, restrictive physical vessel and entering a state of profound, frictionless liberation.
Which highlights the ultimate irony woven into Bulgakov's text and into the modern study of the anomalous.
What's the irony?
Society locks Ivan up in a psychiatric ward to cure him of his madness.
Right.
They believe they are fixing a broken machine, but the anomalous experience was the actual cure.
Oh, wow, yes!
It cured him of his superficial, propagandist, meaningless existence within a dogmatic state. The absurdity of the phenomenon dismantled his hardened worldview, leaving behind the fertile ground necessary for true, uncorrupted knowledge.
The phenomenon intentionally breaks the X-ray machine.
Because the machine is only designed to measure the density of bones.
And the intelligence behind the anomaly is trying to reveal the existence of the soul.
Exactly. We have navigated through an incredible labyrinth of concepts today on this deep dive.
You really have.
From the brutal mechanics of ontological shock and the manipulation of time to the 1920s physics of the fifth dimension.
The Oscar Klein-Kaluza-Klein theory.
Yes. We've seen how interior spaces expand like ZIP files, how geographic distances are collapsed to induce terror, and how a giant cognac-drinking cat serves as the perfect camouflage for a reality-altering intelligence.
The Trickster.
Right. The Master and Margarita was never about predicting the literal nuts and bolts of flying saucers. Bulgakov didn't need to know about metamaterials or classified radar systems.
He captured something far more vital.
The immutable phenomenological signature of the unknown.
Whether this intelligence masks itself as medieval demons, as foreign magicians terrorizing 1930s Moscow, or as transmedium craft violating modern airspace, the underlying mechanism is astonishingly consistent.
It utilizes high strangeness and purposeful absurdity to dismantle dogmatic certainty.
It forces the observer to acknowledge that the universe is vastly more complex, layered, and strange than our institutional frameworks will ever allow.
It is a mechanism of psychological liberation disguised as a cosmic joke.
Beautifully said.
Which leaves us standing on a very precarious edge.
How so?
We've established that the phenomenon deploys absurdity as a perimeter fog. It uses the trickster archetype to hide in plain sight, ensuring that the rigid scientific institutions of our world dismiss the data and look the other way.
Right. It keeps the institutions away.
But consider the current trajectory of our culture. We are gradually compiling the data. We're beginning to see the patterns in the trickster's behavior.
We're catching on to the joke.
So for you listening, here is the question. What happens to human society when we finally stop laughing at the absurdity?
If we pierce through that perimeter fog
and attempt to engage the phenomenon systematically, does the intelligence simply change its tactics and generate a new, even more incomprehensible layer of fog?
Or does our entire consensual reality finally dissolve for good?
It's something to consider the next time the impossible decides to pay a visit. Keep questioning the consensus, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.